Hi class, this is Dr. Kaufman and I'm going to be sharing this video to explain classroom participation with all of you today. So let's go ahead and get started. Classroom participation is earned through the main forum in LoudCloud every week of the course. So we have 8 weeks, we have 2 discussion questions every week, and after you answer those discussion questions, that's where the participation points come in. So your first post should always be your answer to the discussion question. That's worth 5 points, and that's not part of participation. That is just your expected graded work in the course. But after that, you're expected to go back into the forum, look at the posts that are there, or maybe you're the leader of the group, and so you're going to be the first additional post there, and you're going to begin exploring the topic of the discussion question a little further, or maybe the required readings or some journal articles you found that are on the same topic. And so your goal is to get into the forum and earn a substantive post trophy on 3 different days of the week. So the goal is to earn at least 1 trophy on 3 different days of the week. So as you'll see in the image on the PowerPoint slide, you have this student has earned a trophy on Monday, a trophy on Wednesday, and a trophy on Saturday. So what that means is on those 3 days, they contributed a post that met the requirements for being considered substantive, which that word comes out of the word substantial. So a substantive post, I'm going to describe that on the next slide, but the goal is to make a sizable academic contribution to the prevailing conversation in the discussion forum on 3 different days of the week. And when I read those posts, I'm able to click, yes, this is a substantive post. And so the goal is for me to look at your work and do that 3 different days during the week. Now, in order to accomplish that, it's very important to understand what substantive is defined as. And this is based on the actual dictionary definition of substantive. And this is the guideline that I go by when I'm looking in the forums. There are 3 qualities of a substantive post. A substantive post is important to the topic. A substantive post is meaningful insight beyond what is already present in the discussion. So it's not piggybacking heavily over another student's post. It's not parroting the conversation that's already happened. It's taking the conversation a step further. And then the last one, this is the one that most students fail to pay attention to, is that it's considerable length, meaning that the post itself, the academic content that is important and meaningful, equals more than 100 words of scholarly contribution. Now, I'm going to just say this, 100 words is not very much at all. It's 4 strong sentences. In LoudCloud, it generally looks like 5 rows of text. And if you have a post that's a really good idea and it's 75 words, you can get to 100 just by adding 2 more sentences of really good ideas that fill in the gaps that are there. So look at what you've already written and maybe take that 3rd sentence and elaborate on it a little bit so that the 4th sentence has more to go off of. This is something where it just takes time to pay attention to your post and make sure that it meets the requirements that I can mark it substantive. It's very disappointing to me when I can't mark a post that's 70 words long, but everything else, it is important to the topic and it's meaningful insight. But one thing I have to do as your course instructor is hold you accountable for the different expectations of the online class. And so since we're not in a classroom 4 hours a week interacting and talking about these topics, this is the only interaction that I have. And 100 words 3 times a week is certainly much less than being with me 4 hours for a lecture in a classroom and doing classroom activities and group work and just, having discussion about the topics in counseling. So it's still a very low trade-off, and I expect that when you have a post and it's a very good post and it's so close, 70 words, 80 words, please just take it across the finish line and make it 100 words. And so that way it's important, it's meaningful, and it's considerable. And then I can mark it as a substantive participation post. So now let's go talk about how a substantive post works. Here is a sample conversation from another student. This is something that happens all the time. I'll see it a few times every week in every class I teach. Good answer, John. I really think you answered the question well. You always seem to do this. Now I've highlighted that part of the post yellow because that is not academic contribution to the conversation. It is polite, and please still include things like this. I like to see you positively interact with each other. But when I'm looking to see, is this a substantive post, I'm looking at the text that is white. Okay, I imagine a client would come to me to get help for depression. Okay, that's clearly an answer to what John has asked the student or asked the entire class. So that's the part where the academic contribution begins. And clearly those 2.25 lines of text are not 100 words of academic interaction. So although this is nice, it's polite, I can't award it a substantive trophy for the day. So let's see an alternative version of that post. This version, this student is also excited by the question John asked. They're using the DSM-5 to be the foundation of their answer. They're also using a mindfulness-based cognitive therapy article that they found with some prominent authors that write on that specific approach to therapy. And they're including their references and citations. So although the references at the bottom are not included in the word count, it is really nice to see how strong the academic qualities are of this post. I would look at this, I would see 2 citations. I'd see that the conversation that follows those citations is sound and it shows that the student read these materials. And I would easily mark this as a substantive post. This is a good example of classroom participation. And so you want to do something like this at least one time on 3 different days of the week. That's what I'm expecting for your participation points. Now, participation amounts to 20 points each week of the course. If you have 0 days with a substantive trophy marking on your post at the end of the week, then that means you have earned 0 points out of 20. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal. We have 1,000 points in our GCU courses, but it is 1/5 of a letter grade. And if you miss those 20 points every week, it is not possible to get an A in the course because you will have lost more than 100 points. So it's really important, if that's the kind of goal you have for yourself as a student, please keep up on your participation. If you have a substantive trophy from one of those posts that I just illustrated on one day of the week, a master's student will earn 7 points, a doctorate student will earn 6 points because the end week total is different. If you have 2 of those trophies on a different day of the week, then a master's student will earn 14 out of 20, a doctorate student will earn 12 out of 18. And if you have 3 different days with one of those substantive trophies earned on your post, you will earn 20 out of 20, or for a doctorate student, 18 out of 18. So there it is, clearly explained what the different amounts of points mean. And I do expect you to remember this. This was part of the week 1 required posts in the class announcements. And just because maybe you didn't read them or you didn't acknowledge that you read them does not mean you're not accountable and responsible for this information. I'm just making this video to make it even more clear how participation is scored, because honestly, I answer this question for 3 or 4 students in every class that I teach every week. So if I'm teaching 10 classes at GCU, I have to answer this question 30 or 40 times. And I try to make it very obvious how the participation scoring works. But this video is going to be a resource that I use quite often. And I hope you're enjoying it. It's making it very clear. Now let's go to some calendar-based examples of how these points are scored. This student earned 3 substantive trophies. Yeah, that's the goal, right? Except all of them were earned on Friday. So unfortunately, this student earns 7 out of 20 because they had at least 1 trophy on one day of the week. And it's by number of days of the week, not number of trophies. So that is a 7 out of 20 example, even though the student did earn 3 trophies. Now this student actually did better than that first example. They only earned 2 trophies though. They earned 1 on Thursday and 1 on Friday, and then they never came back into the classroom that week. But it is on 2 different days, so they earn the 66% amount, which is 14 out of 20 in the master's program. So they actually did better even though they had fewer substantive trophies. That's important to understand. It really doesn't benefit you as a student, if you're trying to be efficient, to try and earn 5 participation posts on one day. It's still only worth 7 points to you. So I always recommend, if you have 3 good ideas at the beginning of the week, save them for different days. So go in that day, share the first one. Go in the next day, share the second one. Then maybe go to the GCU library, get a journal article to add to that third one. And on a third different day, before Wednesday is over, make sure to share that one. It really doesn't help to blow all of the good ideas on one day, because it's still only 33% of your score. Now let's see another example. This student had 2 really good ideas on Friday, and they shared both of them. And so because they got 3 trophies, but it's only across 2 different days, they did the same score as the previous student who had 1 trophy on 2 different days. So this student had 3 substantive trophies, but only spread them across 2 days. And so if they just moved one of those Friday posts to Monday, they would have gotten the full points. But this student gets 14 out of 20 for their participation, because they participated only on 2 different days. So kind of imagine that you're in a class like from undergrad that meets Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and that I'm checking, did you participate on day 1? Did you participate on day 2? Did you participate on day 3? So if you skip class on Friday, you don't get points for participating on day 3. The cool thing about online classes is you can pick which 3 days of the week you're going to class, okay? Thursday's fair game, Friday's fair game, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they're fair game. So you don't have to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You can pick which 3 days. Just make sure you do 3 different days. Now let's go to the next calendar-based example. This student earned 20 out of 20. They shared 1 substantive post on Saturday, then Monday, then Tuesday. 3 different days of the week. 3 substantive trophies. That is a 20 out of 20 for the week. So this student did the excellent version of my example. This is what I'm looking for students to do, and this is what will earn you 20 out of 20 points for participation. This student is an overachiever. They just really liked interacting in the forum. Maybe they shared some extra comments with me, and maybe they saw some of my additional posts or some of the posts from their classmates, and they just really thought, I'm going to get more out of the course if I share my thoughts on the idea, which I support that. If you want to do it for learning, please do it for learning. Absolutely. Jump into the forums and interact as often as you want. But if you're just doing it to be efficient and earn the points, this student earns 20 out of 20, even though they had 1 substantive trophy on 5 different days. There's no extra credit for participation. It's just during that week, how much did you participate? This student got more than 3 days with a substantive trophy, so they also earned 20 out of 20. All right, so that concludes the PowerPoint. I just want to share that if you're trying to find ways to interact with others, look at the posts from your other classmates. See if you have, 3 or 4 other students in the class that you seem to really connect with, or their thoughts really challenge you, and please jump in and start sharing. Another thing is, look at my posts. My posts are in there to help you have something to interact with. I share what is called classroom assessment techniques, or CATs. Those are extra questions that build off of the original question from the DQ1 and DQ2. So when I'm looking at what we're talking about for participation that week, I think to myself, okay, that's what the GCU curriculum team wants them to talk about during this week of the course. What would I ask them if I was their teacher standing in front of them lecturing? What would that classroom conversation sound like? And then I ask you questions to be able to make that happen in our online classroom. So any post that I share that is marked CAT in parentheses, those are the extra questions that I'm only sharing to help you participate more. Also, if you have a Christian faith base or are interested in spirituality connections in counseling, I do share scriptural connections with our counseling topics, and those posts are labeled Integration of Faith. I try to do that for every DQ in the courses that I teach. Sometimes there is a DQ where it's rather hard to connect them, but I still will try. And so you will often see that there is a CAT and an Integration of Faith post. And then if I've been able to interact quite a bit in your class, there may even be extra commentary about the field of counseling. And sometimes this is just me sharing my experience as a counselor or some research that I've found that helped me to make better sense of this concept in the discussion question. And so you can always jump off of those and ask additional questions to me or the rest of the class. You can also share your thoughts about the experience I shared or a similar experience that you've had that sort of sets the path for where you're going as a counselor in training. So those are my final thoughts. I hope that this video is a good resource for all of you to better understand how participation works. That's the goal of the video. If you have further questions beyond that, please still share them in the individual forum. But I'm hoping that this answers almost all the questions that anyone would have about the 20 points for participation that happen every week in the GCU course. Thanks everyone. Take care.